Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Thomas, and I'm an archaeologist who studies the ancient Maya. Archaeologists love maps, so let's start with one. This is the Mesoamerican area. It's the strip of land that connects North America to South America. Meso just means between, so between the Americas. The Maya area specifically is this region right here, which contains parts of Mexico, Honduras, and El Salvador, all of Guatemala and Belize. In this slide, I've also included a timeline that gives you a rough idea of when the ancient Maya are around. As early as 2000 BC probably, and going all the way to the coming of the Spanish in the 1520s when they entered the Maya area. To those of you who think that the Maya died out in ancient times, I want to reiterate that there are millions of Maya living in Mesoamerica today, and although their cultures and traditions were suppressed by the Spanish for years, they have still survived. And so there are Maya in many different countries in Mesoamerica who are still living, or who are still following some of their traditional practices. My interest is in the ancient Maya, so in the life of the Maya before the arrival of the Europeans. Today, many of those Maya sites are under jungle cover, and so it takes a while to find them. A lot of them are under modern development, and some of those sites are very hard to find. And even the ones that are in the jungle takes a lot of work. My own research focused on this river that you see here, the Sibun River in Belize, and we did a lot of work looking for ancient sites along this river, which meant that we were constantly trekking through jungles, avoiding dangerous and harmful plants and animals, and ultimately finding hidden or lost Maya sites. Here is a picture of a group of us standing on top of one of the pyramids that we discovered. This pyramid, when we discovered, was completely covered by jungle growth and trees, and we had to clear it up to get what you see. Just another picture of us on that same site, recording the ancient site that we have found, so excavating, uncovering, making maps and drawings of the things that we discovered. And this is the record that we keep in archaeology of the things that we find. We know a lot about the ancient Maya. By the classic period, so between 250 AD to about 1000 AD, the Maya were especially known for these incredible cities that they built and for the powerful kings that controlled these cities. These kings would set up monuments to themselves. So what you're looking at are stela. Stela are carved stone monuments that generally have an image of a king and usually a text that tells you why he's being commemorated in this case. And there'll be a date that tells you when this happened and what he did. Kings invested a tremendous amount of money or resources and effort into the construction, into huge architectural projects and the construction of massive buildings. It was kind of how they showed their power to both their citizens, but also the people and the kingdoms around them. They made massive pyramids with temples on top, and that's what you're looking at over here. Palaces, very large, rambling residential complexes. Most palaces in the Maya area served both as a royal residence, but also as an administrative complex for conducting the business of the state, conducting the business of the kingdom. And that's one of the interesting things about the Maya. The Maya area had many different Maya cultures and groups. And at no point was the entire Maya area unified under one ruler as one kingdom or one empire. It was always a collection of independent kingdoms. And these kings had alliances with each other, they battled with each other, they traded with each other, but it was never one unified kingdom. It was always a collection of these independent kingdoms, and each of these kingdoms were controlled, again, like I said, by powerful rulers, a number of whom would spend a considerable amount of their resources investing in these massive construction projects, which is what we find as archaeologists, the remains of these incredible cities. In addition to temples and palaces, they had other buildings as well, including things like ball courts. This is a ball court, but in addition to this, they had administrative buildings, marketplaces, they dug reservoirs for storing water, and a lot of other structures and features that were a part of a Maya city. The ball game itself, we know a little bit about it. So those ball courts were used for ball games. Ball games were played with a dense rubber ball, and two teams faced off against each other. And the big sort of difference with the ball game is that you had to keep that ball in play using your hips. While I think you could serve the ball into play with your hands, once in play, the ball had to be kept moving by players using their hips or hitting it with their hips. So while all the kings and the wealthy people were living in their stone houses in the cities, most Maya people lived much more modestly in pretty simple houses that were generally pole walls and thatched roofs. You can actually see houses that probably look very similar to the ancient ones in use today. There are a lot of traditional Maya villages where people still live in pole and thatch constructions, things that would look more like these images that you see. The majority of the ancient Maya were farmers and lived in villages close to their farms. This is actually a modern Maya home next to its farm. While a whole variety of plants were grown, the three most important crops for the Maya were beans, squash, and corn. Corn is by far the most significant and the most used crop in the Mesoamerican region. In addition to farming, the Maya used animal products. So they hunted. We know that they ate things like deer and wild pigs. We know they hunted tapir. They fished, and so fish was a common, we find fish bones at archaeological sites. In addition to, we don't think they domesticated too many animals. So most of the animals that they were interacting with were probably in hunting. In addition to using animals for food, we know that they used animal products. Feathers, for instance, were highly prized, especially green feathers were highly prized by the Maya, and they would use them to make ceremonial cloaks, headdresses. This is actually an Aztec example of what one of these headdresses could have looked like, but we have images of the Maya kings wearing things that look very similar to that. They used skins of animals. Jaguar skins were especially preferred by kings. And so here you see a king of Bonampak in battle, and he wears, as part of his armor, jaguar headdress, jaguar cloak. And so the jaguar is, as the sort of the main predator in the Mesoamerican area, is something that the kings especially used as a symbol of their power and their authority. Maya communities included craftspeople. Often craft production would be sponsored by the kings. The Maya are known for their spectacular pottery, examples of which you can see here. Really amazing stonework with which they made tools and weapons, but also just sort of these ornamental objects, things that were more for decorative purposes or to symbolize power or wealth. But they were using all sorts of materials. This here is jewelry with jade, both these, or jadeites, really, different greenstones. Here are shells that they're using for little ornamental pieces that you could either string on as necklaces, you could use as earrings, but there's a lot of different things that they're doing with a whole host of materials. Just a few more examples. This is one of the largest pieces of jade. It weighs almost 9 pounds that we have ever found in the Maya area, and is the representation of a god, Kinich Ahau, or god of the day, or the god of the sun. Carved shell monuments, really fancy stone spear points, and in this case, even a carved human bone. This is found in a burial and would have been placed as a trophy or an offering with a king who had died. This is a really famous piece. It's a jade mask that was placed over the face of a Maya king when he was buried. This is the King Pakal at a site called Palenque in Mexico. One of the things that gives us further insight into the Maya is that they used writing. They're one of the few New World groups that had a fully realized writing system, and they produced hundreds of books written on paper that was made from the bark of trees. Unfortunately, most of the books were destroyed by the Spanish, and only 4 survived into the modern era. The sample that you're seeing here are pages from a book, a Maya book that is currently in Dresden, Germany. Luckily for us, in addition to paper, the Maya wrote on other surfaces as well, including things like pottery. So you can see here Maya text. And even on the walls of buildings. This particular inscription comes from the walls of a tomb that would have had the burial of a king. And even though the tomb had been looted in more modern times, the walls were still preserved, and we could see the text that they had included with the burial. So between 2000 BC and the coming of the Spanish into the area in the 1520s, the Maya created a fairly complex and spectacular world in Mesoamerica. The arrival of the Europeans resulted in the death of millions of Maya, many as a result of the diseases to which the Maya had no immunity. The culture and the traditions of the Maya changed considerably under the Europeans, and a lot of it, especially the language, was lost. Archaeology and archaeologists are going into this area now and are helping are helping to reveal the history of the ancient Maya and give us some understanding into how these folks lived and how they built their cities, how they organized their communities, and how they prospered in the Mesoamerican jungle. I hope this has been helpful, and thank you.